This is Dreadman. Truly dread.
In November of 1990, Predator 2 was released into theaters to some pretty negative reviews and a much less impressive box office when compared to the first. Over the years, the film has been given kind of this cult classic status in a similar way to something like Highlander or Last Action Hero as a movie that didn't really find its audience until it came out on cable and video. Well, Predator 2 is also a movie that I happen to really enjoy, and I grew up watching both it and the original film back to back more times than I can count. And despite all its flaws, and there are a lot of them, it's also the film that I think has what is without a doubt the greatest Predator kill scene in any film to date. Towards the middle part of the movie, Danny Glover's character Harrigan sets up a meeting with the leader of the Jamaican voodoo gang known only as King Willie. Now, what makes this short scene so memorable is all of the detail that's gone into the dialogue and character work that lasts literally only a few brief minutes before it's all over. In fact, we as an audience don't even get to see the killing of King Willie, and instead are only shown the aftermath of an alleged fight that makes for one hell of a memorable transition that I'm sure most fans of the film have never forgotten about. Predator 2 opens this scene with a brief discussion between Harrigan and the Prince of Powder, as he's called, with the gang leader stating that this thing that's killing both your people and mine is from the other side, a creature from the spirit world, which he even proves by tossing bones that he states always fall in the same order. The added dialogue that you can't see the eyes of the demon until he comes calling are also great little pieces of world building that I think helps sells Predator 2 immensely due to the glowing eyes that we see the creature give off in the first movie. This is something that I think could have been witnessed by someone who's passed down lore in King Willie's past, and it helps build up this anticipation for the quote, demon even more. Now, of course, Harrigan doesn't believe any of this voodoo bullshit, so he gets back in his car and leaves Willie unattended just when the Predator decides to strike, and literally everything about this scene is top tier suspense. After watching things fall from the tops of buildings to seeing the creature walk in the water, slowly exposing its cloak, the way Predator 2 kicks this scene off is gold. I especially love seeing the camera move down to the reflection in the puddle where the monster shows itself to King Willie just before he makes his final stand. And that's it. That's literally all we get of the confrontation before a hard cut to Willie's screaming head is shown being carried away by the Predator in an instantly iconic scene. It's followed by Alan Silvestri's badass score and a montage of the Predator cleaning the skull before installing it in his trophy room that we later see on the Predator ship. Oh, and the newscaster's commentary on what the police found of Willie's remains is the icing on the cake for this whole sequence.
And just recently, King Willie, the drug lord, the vicious drug lord, found in an alley just around the corner with his head cut off and his spinal column torn from the body, a fitting demise to the Prince of Powder.
Predator 1 has some of the most memorable kills in the franchise for sure. In fact, every kill in that movie is memorable. Every quote in that movie is memorable. It's an incredible film, but Predator 2 has what is, in my personal opinion, the greatest Predator scene ever made. This entire build-up and execution of the Predator's attack on King Willie is just absolutely awesome. And the fact that we even see Harrigan slowly stare at his skull when we get to the end of the movie in the trophy room makes it all that much more eerie. This is one of those movies that I saw a really long time ago as a kid and didn't know what it was until much later. I'm talking about times where you're 2 or 3 years old and you look up at the TV at images you don't recognize for years until finally sitting down and watching it all the way through and going, oh, that's where that comes from. For me, it was the scene where some kind of giant monster was in a room making blue goo and roaring on TV. I had no idea what the fuck was going on until a few years later when I marathoned both Predator 1 and 2 back to back and realizing the movie I'd seen back then was this insane sequel. Had it have been King Willie's death that I'd seen back then, I think I would have been more traumatized or something, because that whole reveal of the Predator holding the severed head looks metal as fuck and is just wild imagery that I think makes for some of the most intense stuff in the entire franchise. What other scene in the Predator movies do you know of that not only commits to a really cool kill, but also builds upon the lore with dialogue stating that the superstition around demons could be the cause of these ancient hunters? Or one that's also accompanied with a montage of it not only cleaning the skull, but putting it away as a grand prize from Earth. This is what I think is without a shadow of a doubt the most memorable kill scene in any Predator movie ever made, and I also think it's the greatest scene in a Predator movie full stop. There's just way too much cool stuff going on here for me to think of anything different, but hey, those are all just my own thoughts on the subject subject matter. What do all of you guys think? What's your opinion on what the greatest kill or even just the greatest Predator scene in general happens to be? The original is obviously what I consider to be the best. I love that movie. It's one of Arnold Schwarzenegger's best films ever made, and it's full of a ton of cool stuff. But hey, whatever your own thoughts and opinions happen to be on King Willie's death scene in Predator 2, I'd love to hear them in the comments down below.